everybody! All right, welcome to another video. I'm hoping everyone has tuned in. I am going to take a moment to get technology in order. It looks like, for those of you who are ready right away, that I can share this in a group from my phone, which is pretty exciting. So I'm going to try doing that. Look at that! There it goes. Wow, this is so exciting. Okay, well, now how do I get back to the video? Eee! Look at that. Oh, all right. Hi, Frankie. Hi, Brittany. Hi, Melinda. Hello, everybody. Oh, this is great. I'm finally figuring out Facebook Live. How many of these things have I done now? Maybe a dozen, and I'm finally getting it. I even got the lighting a little bit better this time. Guess what else I figured out how to do? I figured out how to flip the camera. Hi, Jocelyn. Oh my gosh. Wow. Figured out how to flip the camera so, like, when I hold up a book, you can actually read the letters. It's like rocket science. So, yeah. It's the little things of life. Oh, and look what else I got recently, everybody. Da, da, da. Isn't that exciting? Woo. This is the Arc of Competence. So, I didn't even know they were doing an Arc of Competence. An Arc is an advanced reader copy, which is when they print a special early version of the book to send out to reviewers. Usually when it's the third book in a series, they don't bother to send out an Arc, but they did this time, so I'm pretty excited about it. So, it's, I make it 4:02 by my little clock right here, and, it's a little bit late for tea for me, but I do have a teacup. I'm drinking out of, this teacup today. Cute teacup. But I am just drinking water out of it. But I'm very civilized with my water. Must have it in a teacup. Everything must be in a teacup. And you can't really see because I'm on portrait, but I'm wearing a really cute green dress, but it got cold, so I'm wearing it with a sweater. Oh my gosh, Chloe, 2 minutes past midnight. Crikey, people are tuning in from all over and apparently all hours. Oh, this tricky thing with the circular world and all these different time zones. It is ivy, Kitty. Yes, my teacup is in fact covered in ivy. So yes, pip pip. For those of you who are joining me for tea, do tell me what you're drinking in a comment. I would love to know what everyone is drinking for tea, or I suppose if you're having an aperitif or something later on in the evening, tell me that too. I just had tea. I was saying earlier that I've been having an awkward experience with a new organic, I thought it was a loose leaf tea, but it turned out to be a loose pellet tea. Very, very strange. It wasn't, it actually brewed fine. It was a good color and a nice strong brew from these funny little pellets, but I wasn't wild about the taste. So I've given that one a rest, whatever it was. I don't know where I got it or who gave it to me. Rob is drinking Yorkshire Gold, which is another one of my favorites, especially for an afternoon tea. Jenna just got back from the teapot races. I've never been to the teapot races. For those of you who want an amusing read, if you Google the teapot races, you will see these sort of race car meets teapot little device race things that I understand happen in a couple of different places in the United States, but they're very cute and amusing. Anyway, so I am getting the comments. They're coming up. Great. So if you guys want to get us started with any questions, I am ready when you are. Otherwise, ostensibly, we're gonna be talking about competence, but there's competence. There's the 2 different versions, green and blue. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about How to Marry, since it just came out. So we can talk about what's coming out or what just came out. It's a very strange month for me. I've never had 2 books come out so close with each other before. But yes, I'm ready. or any other questions. Questions about writing or career or characters or anything you got. I'm ready for it. Yeah. I'm so glad. Everybody seems to have really taken to How to Marry a Werewolf. I must admit that I was a little nervous about it, since it's pretty, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? It's very much like an ode to hair, and so it's very classic, I guess is the word I was used. It's not as outlandish as my books. All right, Amanda wants to know if I'm coming to Comic-Con. I'm not coming to Comic-Con this year. I was at Phoenix Comic-Con, so I only do one Comic-Con a year. Sarah wanted to know why there were no scenes with Teddy riding. It just didn't fit into the book, didn't fit into the story. Ooh, the questions are coming thick and fast. Let's see how fast I can answer them. There were no scenes with Teddy riding because didn't fit into the plot. Didn't have a scene where I needed them to be riding. Although, you know, maybe she'll turn up in another book. Anything's possible. How long did it take me to come up with the first draft of Competence? It takes me about 6 months to write a book. For a rough draft, that can take maybe 3 months. I'm really rough when I write a rough draft, and then I edit. So I do a couple of revision passes before it goes to anybody. My beta readers, editors, nobody gets to see it in rough draft phase. So it takes me as long to edit a rough draft as it does to write the rough draft. So it's usually about 3 months writing it, and then about 3 months editing it, and then it's ready to be seen. So it's about 6 months for a book, but sometimes that can be quite a bit longer, and I usually like some cushion time on my deadlines to, so I don't blow them. I don't like blowing deadlines. It makes me very nervous. So reticence is a little delayed because things keep happening, but it's actually not my fault, and it's at my publisher's behest, so that's fine. When it's not me blowing my deadline, it's all good. But yeah, it's about 6 months, but like I usually ask for 8 or 9 months to make sure that I have it as good as I feel I can before I hand it in. Oh, How to Marry Audio. So How to Marry Audio may or may not be available. So Amazon kicked it back twice, you guys. And that just means that I put it up through ACX, which is Amazon's distribution system for audio, and they just didn't like the way the files were organized. So I had to go back to my producer and have him redo them and then upload it again. And it's just that every time I re-upload, it takes 10 days to 2 weeks for them to vet it and okay it. So it just takes, it's just a delay in distribution. So as soon as it uploads. So keep an eye, if you're on the Chirrup, keep an eye to your inbox. I'll send you a notification as soon as it's available. Will there be a manga for the other Parasol books? No, there won't. Just the first 3 have a manga adaptation, and we've stopped it at the 3. Rem wanted to do other projects, so she spent years drawing my characters, and she really wanted to draw her own characters, and I didn't want to continue with the different artists. I really liked that artist. So, and I feel like the first 3 books are cohesive as a trilogy, so it works out well, all told. It's really, really rare for any authors to get a graphic novel adaptation, so I'm quite honored that I got even those 3. So, I'm disposed to be happy with what I got. Thank you all. You're saying comments full of nice things about How to Marry. I'm so glad you are so warm towards that little book. It was a real pleasure. It's also, the thing about this one is it's darker than I usually go. I mean, the characters are both pretty broken, or not broken, but sort of, I guess, damaged or troubled. And that's not something I normally write, so I'm really grateful that you gave it a chance and that you followed me into that arena, because it's one that I would like to write more in, so I'm really glad that you enjoyed the book. Jessica wants to know, how many passes do I take in total when I'm writing a book from start to publication? That's a difficult question. It really depends on how tight my deadline is. So what I would like is I like 6 passes before it's seen by somebody else. And a pass is like each time I personally reread the book. So I like to do a rough draft and then a first pass, which is what I call my TK pass. So that's the pass where I'm looking for all of the notes I left to myself that I need to fix or pieces of research that I need to do. So rough, and then the first, which is TK, and then the second, which is like just a general check pass. The third is an audio pass. I like to be able to read the whole book out loud to an empty room. I just find I catch mistakes better that way. And then I will change the font on the book, because that makes me visually see it differently, and I'll do another pass. So it's usually about 5 or 6 passes if I have the time and I have my druthers. It's actually doesn't really work out that way anymore. So it's usually more like 3 passes. Then it goes to a developmental editor or a dev ed, or my editor at a traditional publishing house. So when I'm saying my editor, I'm saying developmental edit. And then with my traditional novels, so my longer books, those usually, there's 2 or 3 back and forths between me and my editor. So my editor will have broad strokes edits. That's stuff to do with like characterization, story arcs, plot, and thread. So go through and kind of, and pacing. So this scene is slow. The editor just is like, fix the scene. And I have to figure out why it's slow and what I need to fix, which I like. I like a kind of, I like to figure out the puzzle of what needs to be edited myself. So we do a couple of times back and forth. And then it goes in, and then at that juncture goes into production. So when I talk about a book being in production, that means the actual meat of the story has been laid out, and I'm kind of done with that. The creative part is done. And then, but then there's 2 other edit passes. So the next edit pass is the copy edit pass. That's typos, line edits, grammar, anglicization if it's going to be happening, all that sort of stuff. So that's the next pass. And then the final pass is a proof edit pass. A proof edit pass is when the book is laid out as you would see it in an actual physical book. It's just individual pieces of paper, but it's laid out with the chapter headings and everything as you guys would read it. And I read it over again and catch any last mistakes at that juncture. So generally speaking, by the time something I have written has gotten to you, to the eyeballs, it's from 6 on the short end to about 12 on the long end. So passes on that book. 12 if I have if I have my options, but it's usually more like 6 different versions have gone through the process. Oh, there's a beta edit pass in there too. I have 5 beta readers who are fans that I picked out of my reader base, who are just really obsessed with the world and really detail oriented and good at keeping track of characters across what amounts to 21, 22 books at this juncture. And so they're in there to like help with character voice check and chronology check, and they'll go over to the Wikia and double check that I got all of that stuff right too. So there's that pass in there as well. That's usually going on either while my developmental editor has it or between the developmental editor and the copy edit stage. So yeah, more than you ever wanted to know about the book process. Katie wants to know if I'd ever consider WizCon. So WizCon is one of my best friend in the world's favorite convention. I've never been invited to WizCon, and I'm not entirely sure how it works. It's in Madison. I hear it's really awesome. Tamara Pierce was one of the early guests at WizCon, and that's when it came on my radar. At least I'm pretty sure she was an early guest. She's one of my favorite authors. So yeah, I would absolutely consider it. It's just Madison is not really easy to get to from my neck of the woods. It's a couple stopovers. It's not a convenient flight, and that weighs pretty heavily into whether I decide to do something. And it's expensive if I'm paying to go there myself. So I have to, in both time and money. So that's why I haven't done WizCon yet, but I hear very good things about it. And if any of you are in the Madison, Wisconsin area, I can recommend it because, like I said, my best friend goes and loves it. And she goes to a lot of conventions, so she should know what the good ones are. Amanda wants to know if self-publishing has been good for my books. That's an interesting question. If you mean, has it boosted sales or interest in the other books, that's really hard for me to tell because I don't have access to the immediacy of the data for my traditionally published stuff. But I like to hope so. Keeping interest in the world. If you mean have the actual self-publishing books done well enough, they have done well enough for me to continue to do them. So thank you all very, very much for buying the novellas and reading them and reviewing them. That is amazing, and that's why I'll keep writing them. They are for you. So, I mean, they are also for me. They're an opportunity for me to explore side characters I love. But that is more what they're there. In other words, self-publishing being good for my books is more that the self-publishing has been good for me kind of emotionally and creatively as a writer, because it's given me an opportunity to explore book lengths and characters that maybe I wouldn't have gotten a chance to if I just stuck with traditional publishing. So I'm definitely one of those authors who really likes both. I like the deadlines and the exposure that a traditionally published book gives me, and I like the tight control and the freedom that an independently published book gives me. So yeah, there's something to be said on both sides. I really genuinely believe that. And if I keep doing it, then obviously I like it, because I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to. At least I hope I wouldn't do it if I didn't want to. Eva says that she loves that I write quickly because it means we get more of the work. Thank you. Oh, I thought there was a question in there, but there wasn't. It was just a compliment, so thanks. I do write pretty quickly. Sometimes getting things out to publication is actually the hardest part of it. But yeah, this is my job. It's my full-time job. I don't have a day job anymore. I'm a writer, so I have to write. That's what puts food on the table. So I write quickly, partly out of necessity. But also because I enjoy writing. I haven't lost the love of it. I feel like sometimes authors can get really easily kind of wrapped up in their own heads and their own emotional feelings about exposure in terms of like everybody reading them and the latest book, being judged and stuff. And that is where a lot of authors get wrapped up into not completing, or imposter syndrome, or not finishing a series, or not writing the next book in a series. And so far I've managed to avoid those kinds of things. I actually think a lot of it has to do with you guys. I know most authors say this, but I really feel like I have a particularly special fan base and readership. I mean, you can just hanging out in the Parasol Protectorate Facebook group, it's different. Like, it's real. I'm in a lot of different groups, a lot of author groups, and a lot of like fan groups myself as a fangirl. And I feel like the Parasol Protectorate group just has a different energy. It's just better. It's all about tea and octopi, and it's fun. And like, nobody gets angsty with me or as angry about the next book. Even if you guys are asking for the next book, it's just because you're excited and you're chipper. And I give you books pretty regularly, so, I'm also fulfilling my side of the bargain, so to speak. But it makes it is a self-fulfilling thing, because it makes it really easy for me to write, knowing that there's that kind of warmth of reception on the other side. So I'm lucky. I'm a really lucky author. Thanks, guys. Marissa wants to know about inklings about the next novella. Is it Delightfully Deadly or something else? I'm pretty sure it's going to be Delightfully Deadly. So, yes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I feel that one noodling at the back of my head. So one of the advantages of doing the novellas and doing the independent projects is that I get to write whatever inspires me at the time. So I will, when I have that window of time open, we'll see what inspires me. But I think it will be a Delightfully Deadly novella. So yeah, I just haven't, and I think I even know whose it is. So. Maria wants to ask about the San Andreas shifters. Absolutely, you can ask about the San Andreas shifters. Please do, and I will try and catch it in the comment. Bethany wants to know how involved I am with the audiobooks of my traditionally published stuff. So the original Parasol Protectorate books, I had very little involvement. So the rights were sold to Recorded Books, and they chose the narrator, Emily Gray, and just presented her to me. Those are the Alexia books. Fortunately, I really love her. I thought she was a great narrator, so it all worked out. She did mispronounce Lord Akeldama, and that was corrected in the second book. However, I believe now Solace has been re-recorded by the same narrator, and so the pronunciation should be correct. And Hash Out Audio now has all of those books. So that was the first series, and then the Finishing School series I actually had more control of, or at least more influence. They asked me, so they gave me 3 possible candidates to read the Finishing School books, and fortunately, everybody involved in the choosing process, including me and my agent and my editor, we all liked Moira Quirk best. And so that's how Moira became the reader for the Finishing School books. And then Hachette decided that they liked her so much they would use her again for the Custard Protocol books. So that's how much influence. So a little bit. Yeah. Gail says swimming and water polo. Yes, yeah. For those of you who haven't read or watched all of my crazy interviews over the years, my sports are swimming, and my only team sport was water polo. I did do a little bit of volleyball in high school, but I'm not a great land sportsman. But I'm a fish. If you stick me in water, I love to swim. So. Let me tilt this down a little bit so you can see my pretty necklace. Annie wants to know, do the Oh, I can't answer that question, Annie. I'm sorry. If you want to trot over to the Parasolverse Spoiler Squee group, you can ask them. And there's much speculation, but I am contractually obliged not to answer that question. Sorry. But generally speaking, the Parasolver Squee group is pretty good on picking up key things. So ask them and they'll answer it for you. Sorry, I'm reading all of your comments and questions, looking for questions. People are saying that doing things like reading it out loud and changing the font are good tips. And yes, I don't often do sort of craft of writing tips, although I'm always willing if there are some authors in the group out there. But yeah, those are 2 of my biggest tips. If you're attempting to revise or edit your own work, changing the font is a big one. So if you tend to write in a serif font like Times or Koshin, which is my favorite font, then if you switch it to a sans serif font like Arial for one of those read-through passes, then it really changes the look of the book, and you really can catch more mistakes that way. I highly recommend it. So Susan says, when I buy your books on Amazon, they always recommend similar books authors, some of which have been lovely finds and others I find puzzling. Do you get any input on the authors that are recommended by Amazon that are associated with me? And the answer is no. That is an Amazon algorithm that's going in, and the algorithm is not only based on what other people who read my books buy, so Amazon is tracking what people like you buy after having read me. It's also based on Amazon's ad platform, so it's based on some of the authors that are using Amazon ads to target me. So they're using my books and my name as a keyword, which is perfectly fine. You're allowed to do that. But so that means that the authors of other books or the publishers have decided that my books are similar to theirs, and sometimes they're just way off base and it's not true at all, but there's nothing I can do about that. And then the other interesting thing about that Amazon algorithm, which is called the also bot, is as in also bought, B-O-U-G-H-T, as in you also bought it. is that it's based on your buying history. So Amazon will take a look at the kind of books that they think you like and cross-check them with the kind of books that people who've read my books have bought, and then offer those to you. At least that's the theory. Amazon is very secretive about how they decide what to recommend. However, if you want some more about that, you can Google Gail Carriger also bots, because I did a blog post about this where I got interested in what those also bots were, and I went in and took a look at them and looked at if I'd read those books and why I thought they were recommended in conjunction with mine, because I was just interested in it. If you want me recommending books to you, then you're best off just following me here on Facebook. I'll post about books that are on sale that I really liked often. Or you can join my Goodreads group, where we have a monthly read along, and we are reading The Tea Master and the Detective, this by Aliette de Bodard, this month, which is a great little novella. I highly recommend it. It's like a space opera, only it involves tea and murder, and it's in the far future with a ship mind, kind of like Mercedes Lackey's ship mind. So anyway, very fun book. So that's the other thing you can do, is if you want what I would pick, but no, I don't actually have any influence over them. Not really, not directly. Ah, there's Amanda saying, have you seen the book club recommendations? So there you go. The other place that the book club recommendations are is I always put the book, whatever my book club pick is for the month, at the bottom of a blog post. So every time I do a blog post, the monthly book pick is there. And also I review books on Goodreads, so you can just go look at my 5-star reviews on Goodreads, and I review them on BookBub now. So both those places you can see my reviews and see what I recommend. It's hard, like, I read pretty widely, so I don't necessarily read books that are exactly like mine, although I'm always looking for a romance thread, and I'm always looking for lighter-hearted stuff. I don't read really dark or gritty, or at least I rarely do. So those are just two things to know, but if what you want is like exactly the same thing as the Parasolverse, that's pretty hard for me to find, because not a lot of people write like straight-up comedy of manners in fantastical settings the way I do. Eva wants to know which books she's missing, if there are about 20 of them now. I could be overestimating, because you have to remember I've written 2 or 3 books more than you guys have, because I always have some books in production. So my capacity to remember exactly how many books I've written is kind of skewed. But if you go to my website, there's a books tab, and at the bottom of the books tab is all of the books, and that will just show them all to you all at once. Constance wants to know about the development of How to Wear a Werewolf. Blameless Channing is sent to watch over Alexia, and she runs around Europe. Did I already know about Channing's background when he's sent to Europe? Yes, I did. Amanda wants to know if I have an independent bookstore nearby where we can buy signed copies. Why, yes, I do. I have a relationship with my local bookstore, which is Borderlands Books in San Francisco. I go in regularly and I sign all of their stock. I was just there 3 days ago, so everything they have in stock is currently signed. If you contact them ahead of time, I will even personalize it for you. So if you are if you want a book for a friend for their birthday or anything, like, I'll go in and literally write your name in the book if that's what you'd like. Borderlands ships all over the world. They will charge you shipping. It's not like Amazon, unfortunately, but you will get a signed book. So if you really want a signed book from me, that's how you do it. You go to Borderlands. You can either Google Borderlands Books, or on my website, for every single book I've written, there is a signed button. That signed button activates an email that allows you to send an email directly to Borderlands, and someone will personally respond to you and make sure you get exactly the edition you want, and everything will be covered. So yes, that is your means to buying signed books. I love Borderlands. I'm a sponsor of theirs, which is, they have kind of a intellectual salon thing that you can join. And so I really wanted to build a relationship with them that, that allows them to take advantage of having local authors. So that's why it's them. So go get them. Jacqueline was saying my nails look pretty. Thank you. I had them done for, where was I recently? For Phoenix Comic-Con, and I get a shellac, so it lasts forever. That's why. So that's kind of why they're sort of a reddish pink too, because I was going to Phoenix and I was wearing, of course, all pinks for How to Marry. I love like a dark tip manicure. It's my new favorite thing. Natalie wants to ask about writing quickly. Has your pace changed over time? Was I always fast? That's a really hard question for me to answer, because when I was first writing, I was also working, or when I was first really committed to writing, I was also working on first 2 master's degrees and then a PhD. And that was a lot of writing already. And so my fiction writing was slow simply by virtue of the fact that I was writing so much nonfiction at the same time, and I was teaching and all that sort of stuff. If I'm really dedicated, I can write quite fast. A writing retreat is the best thing for me. I'm pretty competitive. I know, who'd have thought it? But if I'm with other writers and we're all trying to hit a word count together, even if we're not critiquing each other or going to workshops, if we're just sitting around a table, typing away, that is basically the best thing for me as a writer. And my productivity just skyrockets under those situations. I'm really good about that. And under those circumstances, and these are the only basis of comparison that I have to other writers, I tend to have the highest word count. And I think that's just because I'm in training all the time. A lot of times when I'm on a writing retreat, I'm one of the only full-time writers, and everyone else who's writing there has day job or is part-time. So it's a muscle that I've trained. So I do think I have probably gotten faster, but I have always written very fast. I used to be able to churn out, because I'm a philosophy minor, I used to be able to churn out a 15-page philosophy paper in like 2 hours. So I can type quickly. I'm not accurate. I make a lot of typos and stuff, but I'm pretty fast as a writer. It's psyching myself up to it. It's climbing back into the universe. It's getting the voice right. It's editing. It's a lot of other things that slow me down. And there are times where I am like every other writer you know, in which I'll pretty much do anything not to write. It just feels so insurmountable. But I'm a pretty sort of scientific, logical side of my brain. I like to joke that they're like 2 sides of my brain warring with each other. There's this like spreadsheets, color coding, organized, tidy scientist over on one side, and then there's this like manic, creative, insane artist side on the other. And most of the time, this side can beat that one into submission and get me to write. And that's the part that gets me to write, is when my logic side says, sit down, this is your job, write the book. But occasionally, the like artist one just freaks out. And under those circumstances, all of my brain goes, what's going on? Usually we have this under control, guys. What? Yeah, I know I sound schizophrenic, but most writers have multiple personalities, given that we have all of these characters in our brains. So that was a long answer to your question, but most of the time pretty quick. And I think by comparison to other authors I know, I am generally thought of as pretty fast. There are definitely some authors out there who are way faster than me. There are authors who dictate who are way faster than me, and it's something I would love to learn how to do, but I've never been able to do that. Audio dictation uses a different part of your brain, so it is a training mechanism. And there are definitely authors who type, authors who have... we just had Christine Feehan talking at my RWA chapter this morning, who's a romance writer, who's incredibly prolific. She does 5 books a year, but she was talking about the fact that she just doesn't do anything else. She just writes. Every other aspect of her online presence, her production, she only writes for traditional. All of the other stuff is taken care of. So she writes 4 hours a day with breaks, and that is how she manages to do that. And I don't know if I could do that, even if I cleaned up my schedule in a way that would allow that kind of time. I think I might burn out if I did something like that. So 2 to 3 books a year, plus like any special projects or whatever, that seems... I'm feeling really comfortable about that right now. those of you who've been with me for a while know that back in 2012, I was really edging into burnout when I had that kind of thing with Prudence where I had to take it on a delay, and I thought I could do 2 different series at once. It turns out I can't do that. So I took a long, hard look at my schedule and how many events I do and a lot of other stuff, and realized that I can't be as fast as some people are. I just can't. I know my personality, and if writing became that much of a pain, I would just go back to archaeology. I mean, I love that career. It was a great career. So I don't want to do that. I also really adore being a writer, so I want to stay being a writer. And that means, for me, I can't be as prolific as some other authors are. I had to find a happy middle ground where both of us were happy. Both you and me were content with how many books I was producing, and I think I found it. So hopefully you guys stay okay with just 2 or 3 a year. Oh, you guys are being so nice about the fan group. So for those of you who are just tuning in from the page and don't know about the fan group, it really is a lovely place to hang out. It does get very chattery sometimes. If an octopus article comes up, they're like, everybody's talking about the octopus article. But I recommend the Parasol Protectorate group, which is the name of the fan group, if you want to hang out in a corner of the internet that's just civilized, basically. So Dana has a silly question, unrelated to the current topics. Dimity and Pillover's mother is a kitchen chemist. Does she show up in Heartless in the OBO? Oh, God, that's an interesting question. I hadn't envisioned that, as I give you guys so many cookies that you tend to like find more cookies anywhere. I was like, ooh, I'm not that clever. I wish I were that clever, or that had that much forethought. But no, I hadn't intended that crossover between Dimity and Heartless. I will say that the romance between Dimity's parents is one that I would love to write someday, the 2 evil geniuses. But, you know, that's just on the long list of, ooh, that would be fun to write about. So let's see. Jillian says, How to Marry was amazing. Thank you. Faith was one of my favorite protagonists to date. Would I consider maybe a Canadian as well as a North American? Absolutely. It was really fun to write an American. I never thought I would. But she was great. And Faith was definitely the moment that I knew I was going to write Channing. So I always wanted to write Channing's book, but I had to find the right person for him. I had to find the right voice to match him. You know, there really is another way. And when that American voice, when Faith's like Buccaneer, Edith Walton Buccaneer style voice popped into my head with her sort of practicality and her love of rocks and everything, that was when I knew I could write his book. So yeah, and I would definitely not rule out another North American character of any kind. I don't rule out any place in the world, really. I find often when I'm thinking about the Claw and Courtship books, when I'm thinking about who to match up with some of the London pack or the Kingair pack, the woman's voice, I write from both perspectives, but I need to feel the female perspective as a writer before I can really start writing a book. And who knows where that voice comes from? I have no idea, but in Faith's case, just happened to be American. Cindy would like to know if we will see more of the Wicker Chicken. Yes, you absolutely. There's 2 major projects coming down the pipeline for next year, 2019, both of which you will get a little sneak peek at. A big peek in one case, and a very pivotal peek in another case on the activities of the Wicker Chicken. So don't you worry, she's always there. Anouk wants to know if there will be an Indian character as a main character. It's definitely a possibility. Again, I'm not ruling it out. I did do all of that research into 1890s India. It's kind of a matter of who gets on to the ship and who comes to London. It would be really fun to have an Indian woman come into the pack or something like that. So like I said, definitely not ruling anybody out. Oh, someone was complimenting my necklace. Thank you. It's lucite. I think it's a 1930s. I don't know for sure, though. I picked it up at Portobello Market in London. Lisa wants to know about the spoiler group. It's called Parasol Verse, all one word, Spoiler Squee. It is connected to the Parasol Protectorate main fan group. So if you're in there and you look at the top, it will show other groups that are connected to this group, and the squee group is connected to it. So you can find it that way too. Oh, and we got a link to the spoiler group. So I'm behind you guys. The comments are going well ahead of me. Bethany wants a craft of writing live. I'd be happy to do a specific live focused on any topic if you guys want, if there are enough questions to fill. I mean, I tend to do these as an hour. Oh my gosh, we're already 40 minutes into this one. Crikey. Vika wants to know if I plan to come to Europe or the German book. So I did Frankfurt Book Fair several years ago. And I was back in Germany again, so I've been to Germany twice now, and I've done Epinal and Saint-Malo in France. The closest I'm getting that I know is I'm coming to the Dublin Worldcon next year. So if you can get to Ireland, I'll be at least close. And I recommend the Dublin Worldcon. I think it's going to be an amazing event. The organizers are really on point, and generally speaking, Worldcons are really fun. So if you want to meet authors up close and personal and you're into the science fiction and fantasy genre, I would consider giving that one a visit. So that's my immediate plans for Europe. Melissa's from Singapore and says, super excited to see Singapore, the new Custard Protocol book. I was really excited to write it. I went to the Singapore Writers Festival a little while ago, and I just totally fell in love with Singapore. I love it there. So, and I might have accidentally promised the Minister of Culture that I would put Singapore into my next book, and I figured I better do that if you make a promise to a politician like that. So that's why Singapore is in it. But also I really loved Singapore. And because I was there, I had an opportunity to pick up a bunch of primary source material on what Singapore was like in the late 1890s. And that made a big difference. I was at the National History Museum in Singapore, and they had these great books with like letters and images and all this sort of stuff from 1895. And I was like, oh, sold. We're putting this into confidence. Maria wants hints about the Omega Objection. Who's Isaac? Oh, you have been sneakily looking about. So, yes, Isaac is the new point of view character for the next San Andreas Shifter book. So we're switching gears out of the Parasolverse for a moment into the Gail Carriger range. That book's already written, so I just have to put it into production. It's in a rough draft stage, so like I said, it's got to go through the revision process, but at least you know it's written, which is the hardest part. So it's definitely happening. Right now, it's early November. I've got a couple of projects that I'm hoping don't interfere with it, but I'm really going to try for early November. It is, Isaac is the new character. Isaac is a bartender, and he has no smell, so he has no scent of his own. And this confuses werewolves greatly, as you might imagine. So there's something unique about Isaac. He's also on the run for some reason or another, so he's hiding. So that's kind of the setup. And the love interest is Tank. So you saw Tank briefly as one of the members of the pack. He's the really, really big guy in the background. He's kind of quiet and a little grumpy. And he is the sex. So those are the two for the Omega Objection. And yeah, I think you'll like it. I'm really excited about it. It's super sweet. So, yay! So Amber says she just refound Solace. Actually, that reminds me of a story. Someone on Twitter recently was like, oh my god, I just found this strange book called Solace and I just started reading it. And they tagged me in it. I was like, this is a great book. And I was like, oh, honey, you got a lot of books to go. I was like, I'm glad you like it, but welcome to the world. There are many books for you to read. Bethany wants to know the great pink lipstick thing. So for those of you who weren't following on Retro Rack, which is my fashion group, for those of you who don't know, I was on a pink lipstick hunt. You can see I'm not wearing the pink lipstick. I'm back to the red, which is my favorite. But I found a pink. I did. So yes, it all got sorted out in the end. I think I talk about it in the Retro Rack group, what I ended up choosing. I found a very nice bright pink. It's still not quite as dark as I wanted, but it's good enough. Katie is sharing a WizCon story, which I will come back and read later when I'm rereading comments. Everybody's talking about Borderlands. Great. Tell them I love them. All right, so stop asking questions for, I think probably for now. And if I manage to get through everything and we still have a little bit of time, I'll ask for more questions. But right now, let me just get caught up on everybody. Tanisha has a question. Where do the names come from for the characters? So I would love a job just doing names. I love naming characters. It's really funny because I will meet authors. Like my friend Merle Lafferty has said that one of her least favorite things to do is come up with titles, chapter titles, and character names. And I'm like, oh my God, those are my favorite things. Those are my absolute favorite things to do. I love naming things. I think it has to do with my love of P.G. Woodhouse, who just had the craziest, most absurd, most British names ever. So I think that's where I get my love of names. They just spring, like, sometimes they spring fully formed, the absurdity of them. Lord Aquadama's drones, for example, are often just like, crazy name in my head. And sometimes they mean things. So, you know, a lot of times my names are cookies. So Alexia Terabati, her last name is actually a cookie for a famous historical feminist. So do yourself a solid and look up the fantastic Archangelica Terabati. She is a great historical character. And so that's how Alexia got her name. But I just love naming things. Sorry. This is, for those of you who see the lives, you hear me going do a lot, because that is my, like, brain is in process noise. We want a Brazilian character. Jocelyn wants to go to, oh my God, Jocelyn. For those of you who don't know who Jocelyn is the tea mistress extraordinaire in charge of tea dueling. If you ever have an opportunity to watch tea dueling, it is the most amazing thing in the world. It makes my heart so happy. I love tea dueling. And she is talking about coming to Dublin, and it would be great. Nothing would be better than, like, the final meeting of so the original tea dueling, I think, started over in the UK somewhere. It would be great if there was, like, a matchup of the tea dueling. Anyway. Rachel is introducing her students to my books. Yay! I have the Steampunk Scholar, Mike Pershon, has written a couple of papers on my books, and I love it because I always seem so smart when someone else is studying my books. Character names. Gussie Finknottle. Yes, there it is. That is one of my favorite Woodhouse names. Oh, so China is saying that they follow me on Pinterest. Hooray! That's great. Pinterest doesn't give you a lot of feedback about if anybody is like following you or anything. I mean, they give you a little bit, but not a lot. So it's nice to know that, yeah, I do mostly use Pinterest for myself, pinning useful things. And I do have a lot of secret boards that you don't know about because, of course, I'm doing like research for Reticence and writing Reticence right now, which is the final book in the Custard Protocol series. And I don't want you guys to know too much about that. So there are secret boards, but then I'll release a board and I'll be like, okay, which I did recently with all the How to Marry boards. So there's a Faith board now for you to check out, and Teddy, and the book itself. So you can see a lot of behind the scenes research in like the outfits that they're wearing and the scenery and the places that they visit and stuff. So yeah, I'm excited. Claudine wants to know if I have a favorite werewolf name from Biffy's pack. Oh, well, Augustus Blue Bottle. Is it Augustus? I'm rather fond of Blue Bottle. I think that's a great name. Reinhardt's pretty good too. There's a couple of ones that I really enjoy. So all the werewolf names obviously mean wolf in some respect or another, because that's my tricksy ways. Teacup holster, yay! Katie's saying that she wore her teacup holster to WizCon. Excellent. Spread the love of the teacup holster. I'm so glad everybody likes my Pinterest boards. It's really, I didn't really know people. Oh, Rachel is asking the very fateful question, when it comes to scones with high tea, cream first or jam? And I will give you the answer that I always give, which is there butter? Because if there is butter as well, then it's butter, then jam, then cream. But if there's no butter, then the cream takes the place of the butter. So then it is cream first and then jam on top. And I will stick by that until the world ends. So the answer to which comes first, the cream or the jam, on a scone will always be, is there butter? Because if you're going to indulge, you might as well indulge. I like butter because it adds that little like salty component. It has to be salted butter. So my preference, therefore, at a cream tea, and for those who don't know, I spent a great deal of my childhood in Devon, the land of cream teas. So my personal preference is a little bit of nice salty butter, and then some lovely, lovely jam. Strawberry jam is or raspberry. Those are my preferred. And then a dollop of clotted cream on the top. Oh, Ellie asks what I'm reading right now. So I talked about the Tea Master, the Tea Master and the Detective, which is the novella that the group is reading right now, which I really enjoyed. But, oh, I wish I had my Kindle with me. I just read, and I just reviewed it. So my most recently reviewed book on Goodreads and on BookPub was this fantastic book by Amy Lane, Into the Dark or something like that, which is a male fairy tale retelling of Beauty and the Beast, and it was so good. Oh my god, I could not have been happier to have read that book. I'm not a huge fairy tale retelling person, but when I find a good one, I really get into it, and this one it's really a tearjerker. It has a happy ending, but definitely there was a lot of me crying on the couch and lots of tissues, but it was exactly what I needed. So yeah, I will find the link and put it in and comment and talk about it. But yeah, I just reviewed it, so it's the most recent one I read, and oh, it's so good. Yeah, loved it. So yeah, I think we're almost there. Any last couple of questions? I have a little more time to wrap up. China's like, I missed the scones. You can rewatch it. You can rewind and rewatch it. The great scone debate. Oh my god, you guys, I cry all the time when I'm reading books. You should have seen me The Song of Achilles. Christ. Or that Gene Johnson space opera trilogy, There's Not a Reason Why. Oh my god, which is, I'm gonna spoil it for you because you need to have it spoiled. And you know from the beginning it's the story of a martyr, but I think I went through a whole box of tissues. And there's sometimes when that kind of crying, like The Song of Achilles or There's Not a Reason Why, is necessary. Like it's sort of this cathartic, get it out of your system kind of crying. And of course, when I picked up Song of Achilles, I knew what was going to happen, so I knew what I was in for. But boy, did I sob. Man, yeah, books totally get me. I completely will immerse myself and bawl my eyes out. It's not something I like doing too often, so most of the time I go for an uplifting book. But sometimes, like the book I was just talking about, the Amy Lane Beauty and the Beast retelling, the book gets me when I didn't realize it was gonna get me. So, but it was still happy at the end, so it's all good. Oh, Jessica wants to know if there will be 2 different covers for Reticence as well. Yes, there will be. So because the same situation is in place for the final book in the series, which is I am publishing to the foreign market and to the UK myself. So I will give it a different cover. And I will wait, like I did with this one, to see what the US cover is so I can try and match the colors again, just to keep confusion. So I won't know the cover until I see the US one. So that's, yeah. Gillian wants to know if I will ever write the kind of scenes that make you cry. Well, I did have people tell me that the Lord Akeldama scene in the sunlight where Alexia takes him outside to see the sun, I think it's the sunset, made some people cry. So I have managed to, apparently. I don't really do it intentionally. It is unlikely that I would ever write a tragedy, which is one of the reasons that I have sort of steered clear of writing Alessandro's book, because this is not a spoiler, or it shouldn't be for most of you. He does not have a happy ending, and I really struggle to write that personally. So that's one of the reasons that book has kind of been sort of sitting in the sidelines as a maybe. I would struggle to delve that deeply into that headspace, because, I mean, you guys can read a book in the space of a week, or in some cases a day, or in some cases overnight when you should be sleeping. But I have to live with writing that book for months. And if the book is sad and depressing, that would be me living in a sad and depressing world for 6 months. And I just don't know if I have the strength for that. So that's one of the reasons I write such lighthearted stuff, is because I have to live with it for so long while I'm writing it. So, I mean, it's possible that I would do that. I feel like How to Marry a Werewolf was a little bit more kind of darker and cathartic and a little tearjerkery, but I, it's a little bit like a hot oven to me. Like, I kind of like, maybe, but I'm probably not. Constant wants to know if when I'm writing Quenelle, if I wrote him with an English or a French accent. I imagined him with a French accent. I actually imagined him with the kind of Creole accent, which is totally wrong, obviously, but that's kind of what he was in my imagination, because to a certain extent, he's an ode to, oh my god, my brain just like, the Marvel character with the cards that he charges. Shoot. Anyway. You all know who I'm talking about. Who has a crush on Rogue. Well, my brain is quite fried, you guys. It has been a very long week and a very long day. Oh, so yeah, some of the comments are saying that they cried reading How to Marry a Werewolf. So yay! I do like to make people cry. I am an author, so anything that like pulls on your heartstrings and your emotions makes me like viscerally happy, because, it's that weird Machiavellian thing where all we authors really want to do is like toy with your emotions. So that always makes me happy if I manage to make you cry. And there are people saying that they cried during Imprudence, right? So some people cry during Imprudence when Rue has that moment where she realizes that her dad is mortal and that he's actually going to die eventually. And that, perhaps that is playing on an experience that you had. I did that intentionally because one of my things in writing Imprudence was I was really trying to explore that point when we as children realize that our parents are real. Our parents are separate identities from us. And for me, that was definitely part of the college experience. I remember going away from college and then coming back and looking at my father and being like, oh, he's old. He's mortal. He's not this, like, my dad, larger than life Viking that he's always been. He's a human being. And so it was fun for me as an author to kind of write that moment for a daughter and her father when her father actually was meant to be immortal. So maybe if you cried particularly at that moment, it was tying it back to a similar experience in your own life. Oh, see, everybody's reporting having cried at some point in my my job, so That's good. Yeah, that's the upside of writing kind of comedies of manners, is I can have my poignancy moments be less dark than other people, because most of the rest of the book is so bright and light. So like when I have a moment of poignancy, it's just like Biffy sobbing over a piece of raw meat after having been rescued. And that seems like a very innocuous moment when you describe it, but with all the other stuff having gone on around it, you realize that what he's crying over is the loss of like hope for a different future. And yeah, that's the really cool thing about being essentially a comedic writer, is my moments of poignancy can be very kind of small and impactful. And it's really fun as a writer to be able to write that kind of thing. So Julia came up with the name of that book that I was recommending. Thank you, Julia. It is, in fact, Amy Lane's Truth in the Dark. So definitely recommended. But you'll be cathartic crying, and some trigger warnings for rape in that one. So if you don't like to read that kind of thing, it isn't directly described, but it is referred to. So just be aware that that's in there. So Natalie wants to know if writing Alessandro's story in segments would be easier. Yes, and that's always been what I kind of want to do. And it's so many things I want to write in the Parasol verse, you guys. It's kind of endless. But one of those things is I have sort of snippets of Alessandro's life, so I know them in my head. And I'd love to write those snippets. Much in the way that I wrote A Curious Case, which is a sort of snippet of him in Egypt. I have other little snippets of his childhood training with the Templars, and I would love to kind of assemble them in a sort of serial kind of micro short story way. But, yeah, it's just another one of those things I want to do. Gambit! And Frankie came up with Gambit. Thank you. That is the Marvel character that I was slightly alluding to when I was writing Quenelle, because he's one of my favorite characters of all time. And I know he's a little sleazy, but 14-year-old me didn't really pick up on that kind of thing and just fell in love with him. So that's my Gambit. Look at you all. Everybody knew it was Gambit. There's a million Gambits in the comments. I'm sorry. My brain is so fried. I have no idea. I have not been sleeping well recently. I think it's the weather changing. All right, so I think we're going to sign off soon. I'm going to scan through really quickly and make sure I got everybody's questions. But yes, I'm so glad that you enjoy the poignancy as well as the silliness. And thank you all for catching me up on the times when I forget stuff. And it's been a fantastic hour talking to you. Yes, I should remind you, don't forget that Competence is coming in a month. Those of you in the Denver area, I will be signing both at RWA Nationals and at Tattered Cover. And those of you who want a signed book and you're interested in the hardcover version, you can order it from Borderlands. They will ship it to you. The sooner you get your order in, if you want it personalized, I will personalize it for you. And yes, thank you all for tuning in. I love you all very much. And I'll see you on the next live.